that after 2035, the Indian diaspora will become like the Irish in Australia. Generally, the trade and investment expectations could have been a lot better. I have always been interested in the phenomenon of the study of religion. Take inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi and Swami Vivekananda. Australia has a preferential voting system, and this means that the voting of the Indian diaspora issues is going to become more important to the major political parties and minor parties. I would see the journey as a very mixed journey. As you know, the Australian India Business Council is now 34 years old, so that's a good question to ask in looking at those 34 years. It was established by both the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Australia, and it has picked up volunteers in the key executive positions over those 34 years. And when you look at that relationship, it still has been points of highs and points of lows, but generally the trade and investment expectations could have been a lot better. The relationship has been characterized more by the Commonwealth connection, cricket and curry. It needs a lot more effort into business to business and increasing the trade and investment between both our countries. So in the last post-COVID has probably shown the most promise of the relationship between Australia and India than ever before. Now there are a number of reasons for this, but let me just take the first reason is geopolitical. And the shift and the need for Australia to balance its trading risk portfolio away from China to include India, Indonesia, are important shifts. And that shift makes India a particularly attractive trading partner that goes well beyond the Commonwealth, cricket and curry. And so now we have, as a result of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Scott Morrison in their virtual summit, with a very impressive strategic partnership covering 9 key areas in the bilateral relationship. Now, each one of those areas, ranging from education to health to technology to defense to public administration to agriculture and water resources management, all those areas are very doable areas. And for the first time, those areas are looked at more holistically. And by that I mean they're looking at the supply chain. And more importantly with those areas, there is an element of pragmatism as well as good dialogue. I mean, only yesterday, Minister Littleproud launched the agribusiness chapter, and that was received very well between participants between India and Australia, with over 212 participants. So I see post-COVID as being the first serious engagement with India. And also we've had a webinar with the Business Council of Australia and the Export Council of Australia. This, for the first time, these key high-level bodies are showing a very authentic interest in doing trade and investment with India. And of course, we are delighted to partner with them, as well as partner with our Indian counterparts, that is the FICCI and the CII, and of course the Australia-India Chamber in Chennai. So we're in a good space in which to really deliver the goods on this relationship. And in the end of the day, we have a very simple performance indicator. What have we as Australia Business Council and our key relationships done to increase trade and investment? All our webinars, all our social functions, all our communication is geared to that very simple performance indicator. And we're now launching the Australia-India Business Council Digital Road Exchange. This digital platform will, for the first time, help us to monitor and document the business-to-business relationships across those 9 areas of the strategic partnership. And we're looking forward to that in itself as a very powerful tool to enhance the bilateral relationship.
How do you see the rise of the Indian community here in Australia?
Now that is, I think that is a good question. So let me just start with the personal journey. I was born in Kerala, in India. My siblings were born in Kenya, in British East Africa. We came here in 1964 for one reason and one reason only, and we only came on a 3-year permit. When you think about it, that's extraordinary. For 9 children, including, of course, the parents, our mother and father. We came here for education. Now, that is a very strong theme with all Indian families, you know, education, education, education. From all strata, there's a great fundamental belief that is the most important thing for our parents to do. So I'm very appreciative that our parents came to Australia. And when I think about it now, you know, on a 3-year permit is very, very courageous and risk-taking with a large family of 9. When we came here, the Indian population was very small indeed. When my mum used to wear a sari and go into the Myers or any of those shops, it'll always attract a whole lot of beliefs, looks and whatever. When we were here, my father always believed you should master the English language 100% and then translate back to Malayalam or whatever if you wish to. So we were brought up to really make a difference in this community. And so my father was a lecturer in comparative education. My mum's an ex-school principal. We were encouraged to excel in whatever we did. And all of the 9 siblings in Australia have done very well, be it in largely in the medicine or the public sector or in scientific research. So when I look at the Indian community as we were growing up, we established, for example, the first Malayali Association in Brisbane. Only 4 families then. Then we got corporatized in due course. We formed the FICQ in response to Pauline Hanson early when she was the member for Oxley. So the Indian community has grown over the years. We also, like all Indian communities, each one came with their own beliefs, their own prejudices, and to unite together has been a great achievement in Queensland. Be it, you know, Punjabi, Bengali, Tamil, you know, Malayali. We've all got together for a belief that we are Indian diaspora, but also we have here in Queensland have really tried to engage with the broader Australian community. That's very important. Many of us have married Australians, as indeed I have. It's over 45 years of marriage to my wife, who is an Aussie, 4th generation Aussie. And I think that's very good, that the Indian heritage is shared on both sides of the fence. And I think that Indians now are excelling in business, they're excelling in the professions, and the one area that I believe they do need to excel in, and we need a lot more push, is in politics. And that is in the area of local government, state government, and federal government. We haven't quite exerted the political muscle that we need to exert. We certainly have exerted the business muscle, the community muscle, and in the professions, be it medicine and law and all those key areas. The timing now is right for the Indian community to actually show its identity, be it in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth. We need to do that, and the ACT. And Australia has a preferential voting system. And this means that the voting of the Indian diaspora issues is going to become more important to the major political parties and minor parties than ever before. It can mean the difference between winning and losing a seat. So I think we've come a long way in Australia for the Indian community. Our biggest challenge is not to bring our prejudices and politics from India into Australia, but to operate as an Indian diaspora to enrich and make a difference in this country. And I think we are making that difference. And it may well make Peter Varghese's prediction true, that after 2035, the Indian diaspora will become like the Irish in Australia.
Your fondness for the philosophy and principles of Gandhi and Swami Vivekananda, how did that come about? Would you like to say a few things on that?
Yeah, sure. I have always been interested in the phenomenon of the study of religion. And when I was at university and I was doing my first degree, I said to my mother I was interested in the phenomenon of religion. So she said, why don't you do a university degree in it? So I did the Bachelor of Divinity at the University of Queensland. It's a secular degree. It was the last of its course actually when I finished it. In the course of doing that degree, I read a lot on Mahatma Gandhi and Swami Vivekananda. And in fact, when we got married in 1975, in 78, when my wife and I went to India and we met with my grandparents and all, I took her on the Vivekananda Trail right up to Cape Comorin, as it was then known. Now, when I look back at those many years ago, we went in a third-class bus. She was a redhead from Australia sitting next to this Indian as we were going through Vivekananda. And I've always believed that Vivekananda had an incredibly important message, not just to India, but to the world, in terms of the universality of values, in terms of the oneness of humanity, in terms of the fact that religion is expressed in different forms, and that at the end of it all, we're all more united than disunited. Mahatma Gandhi had exactly the same message. He lived it as Swami Vivekananda did. And so both of these are mentors in many ways in the journey forward. And both of them, particularly Mahatma Gandhi, have been through the tough political world, and have managed to reaffirm those core human values: respect, integrity, right? A belief that there's something beyond ourselves, service to others, selflessness, making a difference, and still working with those who are destructive and who know other way of life other than to act in more destructive and evil ways. So that's been an inspiration for me to go on the path of ethical behavior and on the path of believing in yourself, and believing that there is a transcendence and a transcendent universe that flows with you when you do the right intention and you follow everything with the right intention.
In terms of working in unison for a common cause, so what is your key message for these organizations from you?
Well, my key message to them relates to your first question, which is take inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi and Swami Vivekananda. And if you take that seriously, then you will find the path to conciliation. You will find that your ego and your personality wars take second place to deferring to community good, to deferring what is good for the community. So my advice to all of the Indian community groups is go to your own religious and non-religious beliefs and go to that which unites you rather than divides you. Be it Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, or no belief at all. Underpinning all of that, there is a broad community good and public interest. And if you follow that, then you will make a difference and your communities will make a difference. As someone who has conducted a number of mediations behind the scenes for the last quarter of a century, I have seen some really passionate differences of opinion. But I'm happy to say that in nearly all of those cases, at the end of a torturous process of dialogue, they have come to an understanding of each other, and those issues have rarely cropped up again. Now, Queensland really shows the light in relation to other states. We are a relatively well-united diaspora here, and we do have elements of conciliation that does work through, passionate as it is. But at the end of the day, being in community organizations is not about your ego trip, right? It's about serving the community. It's not about what positions you hold. That is a privilege, and it's not a right to big note yourself and to do things that are not in the interest of the community or the public interest. I think it is very important for the Indian diaspora to respect the indigenous communities of Australia, their great culture and heritage. And when we do the acknowledgement to the traditional owners, we should really say it with sincerity and authenticity. Personally, I've had the privilege of spending 18 years with the Lockhart River community in North Queensland. That's a very remote community of about 750 people or so. I was for the first 12 years of that, I was Director General of a government department, and I was designated as the government champion. And I was able to work with this community to improve the areas in a range of areas, from education to commercial undertakings to building industry to serving the communities at a great disadvantage in moving forward. When I joined Springfield City Group and left that role as government champion, we established the Puya Foundation, which means life force. The Puya Foundation was established to serve the people of Lockhart, both in leadership, but also in initiatives like an early childhood centre. So we have just completed an early childhood centre, first of its kind in North Queensland, and it has been built on funding from both the private and public sector, which is very, very unusual. And I should like to thank, for example, the Fairfax family here in Queensland for having contributed millions of dollars to that project and to other donors. We are very committed and to bringing Indigenous communities to address the disadvantage that they live in and face in. And I'm also hopeful that Indian companies coming to Australia will engage with the Indigenous communities. For example, I'm delighted that Mahindra was with me as we met with the Mayor of Lockhart River, and they are looking, for example, at attracting the Indigenous communities in North Queensland to look at purchasing Mahindra SUVs, which are a lot cheaper than their competitor. And as those types of relationships develop, I think you'll find that Indian companies will also contribute to the well-being of foundations like the Puya Foundation and others, as we have seen, in fact, Adani do so with Indigenous communities in Central Queensland. So to me, the message is a good relationship with Indigenous Australia is important. We do have, as you correctly opened up your interview, going back thousands of years, a linkage in there. And I would like to see that as the Indian diaspora grows in influence, in different networks, that it will always support the Indigenous people of Australia.